The Galactic Diplomatic Corps considered first contact procedures to be a matter of precise science. Senior Ambassador Ziravex of the Unified Systems had personally overseen 16 successful integrations of pre-FTL civilizations into the galactic community. Each followed the same meticulous protocol developed over 10,000 years of peaceful expansion. So when the monitoring station detected a Class II civilization on a volatile planet in the Orion spiral arm, Ziravex expected nothing more than routine procedure number 17. She couldn't have been more wrong. The massive diplomatic vessel emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its crystalline hull designed to appear both impressive and non-threatening. Ziravex stood on the command deck, her iridescent scales shifting through calming patterns of blue and green as she reviewed the preliminary data on humanity. "Curious," she muttered, her secondary eyes focusing on the environmental readings. They'd survived on a death world. Tectonic instability, extreme weather variations, aggressive wildlife. Her assistant, Kittel, nervously adjusted his atmospheric processor. "Perhaps we should reconsider the standard approach, Ambassador." Kittel's concern rippled through his bioluminescent spots. "The preliminary data suggests they're remarkably adaptable." Ziravex dismissed his concerns with a casual wave of her upper appendage. "They've barely established a permanent presence on their moon. They're precisely where every other species has been at this stage of development." The ship's AI interrupted their conversation. "Ambassador, I'm detecting a significant seismic event at our designated landing zone. The humans appear to be experiencing what they call an earthquake." Ziravex's scales flickered with annoyance. "Adjust coordinates to the secondary site." "Ambassador," the AI's tone shifted to something approaching awe. "You need to observe this." The main view screen activated, showing aerial footage of a coastal city in chaos. Buildings swayed, roads cracked, and the ocean itself seemed to be retreating ominously from the shore. But it was the humans that captured everyone's attention. Instead of fleeing in panic, they moved with purposeful precision. Emergency vehicles screamed through the streets, their drivers navigating crumbling infrastructure with impossible skill. Teams of humans in specialized gear were already evacuating buildings, setting up emergency response centers, and establishing communication networks. "Impossible," Kittel whispered. "The quake is still in progress. How are they organizing so quickly?" Ziravex's scales had shifted to a deep purple of fascination. "They're not organizing now. They were already organized. They prepared for this, on a planetary scale." The footage continued, showing humans using primitive but effective tools to rescue their trapped fellows. They moved through debris with practiced ease, communicated across damaged networks with redundant systems, and demonstrated a level of coordinated response that should have been impossible for a pre-FTL civilization. "Ambassador," the AI reported, "I'm detecting what appears to be an incoming oceanic displacement wave. Their scientists call it a tsunami." The humans had detected it too. Warning systems blared across the coastline, and their response shifted with devastating efficiency. The same creatures who had just been conducting delicate rescue operations now transformed into a logistics machine, moving thousands of their kind to higher ground while maintaining order. But some humans moved in the opposite direction. Small vessels headed out into the strengthening waters, their operators seemingly intent on reaching larger ships still at sea. "They're going to die," Kittel stated flatly. "Those waves will destroy them." Ziravex watched in fascination as the humans executed what could only be described as choreographed chaos. The small vessels, Coast Guard they were called, navigated through increasingly treacherous waters. They'd reached the larger ships, coordinated evacuations, and somehow, impossibly, brought most of them to safety. "How many casualties?" Ziravex demanded once the immediate crisis had passed. "Scanning." The AI paused. "Far fewer than statistical models would suggest possible." Ambassador, they'd done this before. Multiple times. They have developed and refined response protocols for virtually every natural disaster their planet produces, and their planet produces many. Zerevex's scales had shifted to the white of profound realization. Cancel the standard diplomatic approach. Delete all existing first contact protocols. She turned to her stunned staff. We're not dealing with a primitive species that needs to be gently introduced to the galaxy. We're dealing with something entirely new. What do you mean, Ambassador? Kittle asked. We thought we were making first contact with another developing civilization. Zyrevex's scales rippled with colors never before seen in diplomatic proceedings. Instead, we've discovered a species that has spent its entire existence in a constant state of disaster response and adaptation. They don't just survive catastrophes, they've made handling them into an art form. She gestured to the scenes of ongoing rescue and recovery efforts below. Look at them. No panic, no chaos, just immediate, coordinated action against forces that would devastate most civilizations. And they do this without any of the technology we consider basic for planetary disaster management. Surely once we provide them with proper technology, Kittle began. No, Zyrovex interrupted. We're not here to teach them. We're here to learn from them. Prepare a new contact protocol. We're going to introduce ourselves, but not as advanced benefactors coming to lift up another primitive species. Her scales settled into a deep gold of certainty. We're going to approach them as equals, because any species that can turn survival into a science like this, they're already far beyond what we understood was possible. The diplomatic vessel hung in orbit, its crew watching as humanity continued to demonstrate why they had not just survived on their death world, but had thrived there. And in the ship's archives, a new classification was created: humanity, masters of adversity. Chief xenobiologist Rekta stared at the holographic displays surrounding her research station, her crystalline form refracting patterns of confusion and wonder across the laboratory walls. 3 standard months had passed since first contact, and each new data point about humanity left her more perplexed than the last. Display subject 247's stress response again, she commanded. The hologram flickered to life, showing a human emergency responder during what they called a training exercise. The biological readings were unprecedented. Something wrong, Chief. Her assistant, Velmix, entered the lab carrying fresh data crystals from the field observers. Wrong. No. Impossible. Perhaps. Rekta's crystalline fingers danced across the control interface. Look at these readings. When faced with a crisis situation, human stress responses don't just maintain functionality. They enhance it. That can't be correct. Velmix moved closer to the display. Stress is a survival mechanism. It's supposed to trigger flight or fight. Not this. Exactly. But humans have somehow evolved to channel stress into heightened awareness and improved performance. They call it being in the zone or flow state. It's as if their entire species has adapted to use fear as fuel. The lab's main screen filled with dozens of similar readings from different scenarios. Firefighters entering burning buildings, paramedics performing emergency procedures, disaster response teams working in unstable conditions, each showing the same impossible pattern. But that's just the beginning. Rekta brought up a new set of data. Watch this time-lapse of human recovery patterns. The display showed cellular regeneration at various stages. They heal, Velmix noted. Many species do. Not like this. Rekta's form pulsed with excitement. They don't just heal, they adapt. Look at the muscle fiber density after recovery. The bone remodeling patterns. Humans don't just return to baseline. They come back stronger. They turn their own biology into a self-improving system. Surely there must be limits. That's just it. Rekta interrupted, bringing up historical records. Every time we think we've found their limits, they exceed them. Remember the old data about human temperature tolerance? We thought we understood their range until we found their winter swimmers and desert ultramarathon runners. The display shifted to show humans voluntarily exposing themselves to extreme conditions. They do this for recreation, Velmix. For fun. They deliberately push their bodies to the edge of survival, and their response is to adapt and go further next time. Velmix's outer layer rippled with unease. The diplomatic corps won't like these findings. They're already struggling with human unpredictability in negotiations, because they're trying to apply standard diplomatic protocols to a species that defies standardization. Rekta brought up another dataset. Look at their problem-solving patterns. When faced with a challenge, most species follow established solutions that worked in the past. Humans, they actively seek new approaches. They deliberately make their tasks more difficult to force innovation. But why? Why expend energy seeking new solutions when proven methods exist? Rekta's crystalline form shifted to the deep blue of profound realization. Because they're not just trying to survive. They're trying to improve. Every challenge is an opportunity for advancement. Every crisis is a chance to evolve. She gestured to a final display, showing a composite of human neural activity during various tasks. We thought their brains were simplistic because they lacked the multiple processing nodes of more advanced species. We were wrong. They don't need multiple nodes because their neural networks are in a constant state of reorganization. Their minds are literally rewiring themselves in response to new challenges. That's not possible, Velmix protested. Neural architecture has to maintain stability for consciousness too. For our kind of consciousness, yes, but humans have developed a form of adaptive consciousness. Their sense of self isn't fixed, it's fluid, constantly incorporating new experiences and capabilities. Rekta began composing her report to the Science Council, her crystalline fingers clicking rapidly across the interface. We need to completely revise our understanding of evolutionary advancement. We've been measuring progress by stability and efficiency, but humans, they've evolved to thrive on instability. They don't just survive change, they require it. The Council won't like this, Velmix warned. It contradicts 10,000 years of xenobiological theory. Good, Rekta's form pulsed with determination. Because that's exactly what humans would do, challenge the established theory. And I'm beginning to understand why. She paused, her crystalline surface reflecting the swirling data displays. We've been studying them as subjects, but we should have been learning from them as teachers. They're not just another species to classify. They're a preview of what evolution looks like when it refuses to accept limitations. As if to emphasize her point, new data began streaming in from the field observers. Somewhere on Earth, humans were once again doing something that should have been impossible, and in doing so, rewriting the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. The analysis continued, but one thing had become clear. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to survive adversity. It was their insistence on emerging from each challenge stronger than before. They weren't just adapted to their death world. They had turned the entire concept of adaptation into an art form. The swarm arrived without warning. One moment, the orbital monitoring stations were tracking routine solar activity. The next, space itself seemed to tear open as hundreds of biomechanical ships poured through dimensional rifts. Ambassador Ziravex watched in horror as the first wave of swarm vessels descended upon Earth's atmosphere, their chitinous hulls gleaming with malevolent purpose. All diplomatic personnel, initiate emergency evacuation protocols, she commanded, her scales shifting to emergency red. Alert the human authorities. Ambassador, her communications officer interrupted. The humans are already responding. The main display showed something unprecedented. Earth's supposedly primitive defense systems were activating in perfect synchronization. Military bases across the planet mobilized with practiced precision, civilian emergency protocols engaged automatically, and underground shelters began receiving populations in ordered waves. Impossible, Kittle whispered. They couldn't have prepared for this. They didn't even know about extraterrestrial threats until 3 months ago. They didn't prepare for this specifically. Chief Xenobiologist Rekta's voice came through the command channel. They prepared for everything. Look at their response patterns. They're adapting existing protocols in real time. The swarm's first attack wave met not panic and chaos, but coordinated resistance. Human aircraft, despite being technologically inferior, executed maneuvers that turned their limitations into advantages. They used their planet's atmosphere and terrain in ways the swarm's biological computers couldn't predict. Ambassador, the tactical officer reported, the swarm is targeting our diplomatic vessel as well. They recognize us as the more advanced threat. Zyravex watched as 3 massive swarm ships broke from the main assault, their organic weapons charging. Evasive patterns. Begin emergency. Ambassador, Kittel pointed to the display. The humans. A squadron of Earth fighters had broken away from their defensive positions, moving to intercept the swarm ships targeting the diplomatic vessel. It was suicide by any rational analysis. Their weapons couldn't penetrate swarm armor. Their shields couldn't withstand swarm weapons. But the humans weren't playing by rational analysis. The Earth fighters split into smaller groups, using maneuvers that seemed random until Zyravex's tactical systems recognized the pattern. They were hurting the swarm ships, forcing them to adjust trajectory into. By the first light, Zyravex breathed as the trap became clear. The humans had driven the swarm ships into the path of their own planet's most powerful weather system, what they called a hurricane. The massive storm tore into the biological vessels, their adaptive armor useless against the raw power of Earth's natural fury. They weaponized their own weather. Kittel's spots pulsed with disbelief. They used their planet's inhospitable nature as a defense system. The command deck erupted with new alerts as the swarm launched its ground invasion. Massive troop carriers breached the atmosphere, landing in population centers across the globe. The aliens expected to find soft targets, easy prey. Instead, they found humanity at its most elemental. Emergency responders became combat medics. Construction workers turned their equipment into barricades and weapons. Even civilian populations demonstrated a level of coordination that seemed impossible without central control. Ambassador, Rekta's voice held a note of awe. You need to see these readings. The humans, their stress responses are cascading. They're not just fighting as individuals or groups. Somehow, they're achieving species-wide synchronization. The displays showed it clearly. Across the planet, humans were demonstrating what they called convergent innovation. Different groups independently developing similar solutions to swarm tactics. They were learning, adapting, and sharing information faster than any predictive model said was possible. They're teaching each other how to fight the swarm. Rekta continued, not through formal communication, but through some kind of intuitive understanding. Each group learns from the other's successes and failures almost instantly. A new alert drew their attention. The swarm had landed a massive force in what the humans called Manhattan. The aliens expected urban terrain to work in their favor, limiting human mobility and coordination. They were wrong. The humans turned their city into a 3-dimensional battlefield. Construction crews used their intimate knowledge of the infrastructure to trap swarm units. Transit workers transformed underground tunnels into ambush zones. Even the civilian population played its part, using their daily commute patterns to predict and counter swarm movements. Ambassador, Kittel's voice was hushed. The swarm is sending in their elite units, the Devourers. The massive biotanks crashed through buildings, their organic armor shrugging off conventional weapons. For a moment, it seemed the humans had finally met their match. Then they proved everyone wrong again. Are they? Kittel couldn't finish the sentence. Yes, Zyravex watched in amazement as humans used their own subway system to channel floodwater from the harbor, turning it into a weapon against the biological invaders. They're drowning tanks with their own infrastructure. The battle raged on, but its outcome was becoming clear. The swarm, for all its biological superiority and advanced weapons, had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that humanity's technological limitations reflected their combat capabilities. Instead, they learned what the unified systems were learning, that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their ability to turn everything, even their own harsh environment, into an advantage. As the swarm's forces began to retreat, Zyra-Vex received a transmission from the human military command. Its simplicity belied its importance. "Thanks for the heads up about the hostiles. We should talk about a more permanent alliance. Seems like we might have some things to teach each other." Zyra-Vex's scales shifted to a color she had never displayed before, a mix of hope and trepidation. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would be the catalyst. The swarm's retreat had been a deception. As humanity and their new alien allies celebrated their apparent victory, the enemy's true strategy became terrifyingly clear. The dimensional rifts reopened, but this time they discharged something far worse than ships or troops. The swarm had decided if they couldn't conquer Earth, they would make it uninhabitable. Massive bioweapons, planet-killer-class organisms, emerged from the rifts. These living engines of destruction began targeting Earth's environmental systems, releasing compounds designed to trigger runaway climate reactions and destabilize the planet's already volatile geology. In the diplomatic vessel's command center, Ambassador Zyra-Vex watched the unfolding catastrophe with a sense of despair. "Even if we evacuate now, the planet will be lost. The environmental cascade will." "Ambassador," her censor officer interrupted, "you need to see what the humans are doing." The main display activated, showing scenes from across the globe. Instead of panic or resignation, humanity was mounting a response that defied comprehension. They weren't just fighting back. They were orchestrating a planetary-scale counterattack using nothing but ingenuity and determination. "Impossible," Chief Xenobiologist Rekta's voice crackled over the comm. They're treating their entire planet as a weapons system." The displays showed the evidence. In the Arctic, human scientists were using their deep-sea drilling platforms to tap into geothermal vents, channeling the planet's own heat to counter the swarm's atmosphere-cooling agents. Along the Pacific Ring of Fire, they had repurposed their earthquake early warning systems into a network for predicting and counteracting the swarm's tectonic attacks. "Their coordination is unprecedented," Kittel observed, his bioluminescent spots pulsing with excitement. "Look at how they're integrating civilian and military resources. Industrial plants switched production lines in hours, not days. Research facilities shared data without regard for corporate or national boundaries. Every piece of human infrastructure, from satellite networks to social media platforms, was being repurposed for the war effort." "Ambassador," Rekta's voice held a note of revelation, "remember how we discovered their ability to achieve species-wide synchronization under stress? This is beyond that. They're not just synchronizing, they're synthesizing." The evidence was clear on the displays. Different human groups weren't just coordinating, they were combining their specialties in ways that created entirely new capabilities. Climate scientists worked with military strategists. Urban planners collaborated with biochemists. Every field of human knowledge was being woven into a single unified response. But the swarm's bioweapons, Kittel protested, they're millennia ahead of human technology. How can they possibly? Because they're not trying to match the swarm's technology. Zyra-Vex realized, her scales shifting to the deep purple of epiphany. They're using their experience with their own planet's natural disasters against the swarm's artificial ones. On the displays, the truth of her words played out. Humans were treating the swarm's sophisticated bioweapons like natural disasters, things to be endured, redirected, and overcome through preparation and adaptation. Their experience with earthquakes, storms, and climate extremes had prepared them for exactly this kind of fight. The swarm launched a massive atmospheric converter over the Pacific Ocean, designed to poison Earth's air. In response, humans demonstrated why living on a death world had made them uniquely dangerous. They used their weather modification technologies, originally designed to weaken hurricanes, to create controlled storm systems that dispersed the converter's compounds. When the swarm adapted, humans adapted faster, using their deep understanding of their own atmosphere to turn the enemy's weapons against them. "Ambassador," the tactical officer called out, The swarm is making their final push. They're targeting the humans' major population centers with their remaining bioweapons. But humanity had one final card to play. As the swarm weapons descended, something remarkable happened. Every major city transformed into what humans called a closed system. Underground shelters activated, transportation networks reversed flow. And most incredibly, the city's very architecture began to change. They built this into their cities. Rek'Tah breathed in amazement. All those redundant systems, the oversized environmental controls, the modular infrastructure, they designed their cities to survive apocalyptic scenarios. The swarm's bioweapons found themselves fighting not against primitive human technology, but against urban ecosystems designed by people who had spent generations preparing for the worst. Every street became a channel for countermeasures. Every building became a fortress. Every city became a testament to humanity's refusal to succumb to any threat, natural or artificial. As the last of the swarm weapons fell silent, defeated by humanity's impossible resilience, a message reached the diplomatic vessel. It was from the Human Emergency Response Coordinator, and its simplicity captured everything about their species. All threats contained. Situation normal. Beginning recovery operations. Zerevex's scales shifted through colors that had no name in her species' language. She had just witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. A pre-FTL civilization had not only survived a swarm attack, but had done so by turning their planet's very hostility into a defense system. "Send word to the Council," she commanded. "Tell them." She paused, searching for words that could capture what she had witnessed. "Tell them we haven't just found allies. We found teachers." As the message was sent, Earth began its recovery process. The same skills that had let humanity survive countless natural disasters were now being applied to healing the wounds of an interstellar war. And in doing so, they proved once again why they were the most remarkable species in known space, not because they were the strongest or most advanced, but because they had turned survival itself into an art form. 3 months after the swarm's defeat, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The vast chamber, designed to host representatives from thousands of species, fell silent as Ambassador Zerevex took the podium. Her scales shifted through careful patterns of authority and certainty as she faced the assembled delegates. "Honored representatives," she began, "I stand before you to propose something unprecedented in our history. The immediate integration of Earth, not as a protectorate, not as a developing civilization, but as a full member of the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities thereof." The chamber erupted in protests. A Thoraxian representative rose, their crystalline form vibrating with indignation. "They barely have functional spaceflight. Their technology is primitive by any standard." "Their technology, yes," Zerevex acknowledged. "But we have been measuring civilization by the wrong metrics." She gestured, and holographic displays activated throughout the chamber, showing scenes from Earth's defense against the swarm. "Look at what they accomplished with their primitive technology. They didn't just survive a swarm invasion. They drove it back using nothing but ingenuity and adaptation. They turned their planet's hostile environment, the very things we thought made them primitive, into advantages." Chief Xenobiologist Rek'Tah stepped forward, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light. "The scientific evidence is clear. Humanity has developed capabilities we didn't even know were possible. Their neural plasticity, their adaptive stress responses, their ability to achieve species-wide synchronization under threat. These aren't signs of a primitive species. They're evolutionary advantages we never considered because we were too focused on technological advancement." The displays shifted to show Earth's ongoing recovery efforts. Cities were being rebuilt with new defensive capabilities integrated into their design. The damage from the swarm's weapons was being studied and countered. Most importantly, humans were already adapting the lessons learned to improve their existing disaster response systems. "They don't just recover," Rek'Tah continued. "They evolve. Every challenge makes them stronger. Every crisis teaches them new ways to survive. They've turned adaptation itself into a science. A Moravian delegate raised an objection, but their society is fractured. They have multiple governments, competing ideologies, which is exactly why they're so resilient. Zyrovex interrupted. Their diversity isn't a weakness, it's a strength. When the swarm attacked, their different approaches and perspectives didn't divide them. They multiplied their problem-solving capabilities. They don't need unity of thought. They've achieved unity of purpose while maintaining diversity of method. The displays showed examples. Different nations and organizations developing complementary solutions, sharing information and resources without sacrificing their unique approaches. It was chaos theory applied to civilization itself, creating patterns of innovation that no single unified approach could match. But there's something else. Zyrovex continued, her scales shifting to deeper hues. Something we discovered during the aftermath of the invasion. Show them. The displays changed to show human emergency teams working alongside alien first responders. The scenes were remarkable not for their efficiency, but for something more fundamental. They've already begun adapting their disaster response protocols to account for different species' needs. Kittle explained from his position at the data controls. They're not just learning about us, they're learning how to help us. Their drive to protect and assist extends beyond their own kind. This is why we need them, Zyrovex declared. Not for their technology, but for their perspective. For millennia, we've approached galactic civilization as something to be carefully controlled and regulated. Humans approach it as something to be continuously improved and adapted. She gestured to a final set of displays, showing joint human-alien projects already underway. They're teaching us how to turn our differences into advantages, how to use diversity as a source of strength, how to face the unknown not with fear, but with determination and creativity. The chamber had grown quiet, the earlier protests replaced by thoughtful silence. Zyrovex delivered her conclusion with scales gleaming in patterns never before seen in council proceedings. We thought we were discovering a new species to guide into the galactic community. Instead, we found the teachers we didn't know we needed. Humanity doesn't need our protection or guidance. They need our partnership, and we, whether we realized it or not, need theirs. The council's deliberation was shorter than anyone expected. Perhaps they recognized the truth that Zyrovex and her team had discovered. Humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization wouldn't be their technology or their resources, but their unrelenting drive to adapt, improve, and overcome. As the vote was recorded and Earth's membership confirmed, a human representative stepped forward to address the council. Her words would be recorded as the beginning of a new era in galactic history. We accept this partnership with gratitude and determination. You've shown us that we're not alone in the universe. Now let us show you why that means none of us will ever have to face our challenges alone again. The Galactic Council chamber, for the first time in its ancient history, erupted in applause. The sound echoed through the vast space, marking the moment when the galaxy realized that humanity's greatest gift wasn't their ability to survive adversity. It was their insistence on teaching others to do the same. The age of isolation was over. The age of adaptation had begun.